Phil Redmond, I mean, you've now been saying that although Channel 4, started with great things, you now find yourself wondering what it's for, and that it's sort of it all went a bit downhill. Why are you saying that?
I think I'm looking back to the 1982 when Channel 4 came along. The clue in the name 4, 30% more airtime, great burst of creativity, new people, new ideas, whatever. And I think we've come to a 30-year time span. It's a great time to celebrate, but also to review. Are we still getting that kind of vibrance out of the channel? Or even out of television itself? And I just think that it might be an idea now to just step back and say, the original remit was minorities and voices not heard elsewhere. But if you look across Channel 4, and it's four or five channels, can you honestly answer the question that what you're looking at is things that you can't find anywhere else?
Do you think Channel 4's lost its way?
I think Channel 4 has an enormous challenge, which was when it launched in the time Phil was talking about, television was special. We only had BBC One, BBC Two and ITV, and suddenly this fourth channel came along with an alternative voice. That's not the Times anymore. I mean, television is not special. There are hundreds of television channels. There's hundreds of other media outlets. So it has to define another purpose. And so I don't agree with Phil in the sense that I think it is defining another purpose. I think it's getting towards doing so. Let's bear in mind it still gets about 11% of the overall television audience share with its bouquet of channels. It raises about $1 billion in advertising every year. And it puts, and this is a critical thing, it puts almost $600 million a year into original content. And that's an incredibly important thing to do. And it does it outside the BBC system, bureaucracy, whatever. And therefore, in Michael Grade's famous phrase, it can keep the BBC honest. So in the public service broadcasting environment, it is an alternative voice. And I think some of its programming remains distinctive.
But Phil Redmond, I mean, you said reality TV is where it all started going wrong, basically.
Yeah, I know, and it's quite difficult with Peter here because
because he's the man who invented it.
Yeah,
for
but
this country.
but it wasn't Peter's problem. I mean, when Big Brother started and everything, there was a great idea in there. I think it was the fact that it went too far, and again, the broadcasters decided to do that. It was kind of reasonably easy to do. It was less challenging, and most of the industry relates that way. That's the issue. But I think the real issue too is that Channel 4 actually is a public service broadcaster. It belongs to the public, and I actually think the question is really about, what great contribution are they actually making into the great social debates? It's all right to make a distinctive programme every now and then, but I think if you look across our schedules, there's a lot going on in society that's actually not seen, or not being sort of given the spotlight that television can bring to some of the big issues. And when I'm looking now at today's news agenda, I'm looking across and seeing that we're still arguing about sort of pathways to death, the thing that got us into a lot of trouble when we did euthanasia on Brookside 20 years ago. Education is still an issue. We've still got this huge problem now, what we're doing with all our inner cities.
Is this a dinosaur view of what television's for?
No, it's not a dinosaur view. I mean, Phil's quite right to challenge Channel 4. Everybody should challenge Channel 4. In a sense, we all own a part of Channel 4, and it should be challenged to be fresh, but I think its current management, and they've even said so today on the anniversary, the 30th anniversary, they do want to be fresher. But if you look at, for instance, the way they trailblazed with the Paralympics coverage this summer, and I think created a different sensibility towards disability, not just in sport, but in society. That's the sort of thing Channel 4 should do and should do more of, and can still do, and is still doing. I'd equally point to things like the whole Embarrassing Illnesses series and the public service websites attached to that, and the digital outreach to teenagers, who've got problems of sexual ignorance. So you may say, one or two swallows don't make a summer, Phil, but I would argue that there are things that Channel 4 is doing that are true to its roots, are original, are distinctive, but you should carry on, and I should carry on, and everyone should carry on challenging them to be distinctive.
But Phil may be being a bit polite because you're here, but the allegation against Channel 4 that's often made now is that your genre television, reality television, took Channel 4 down a road that has basically led us to the worst bits of celebrity culture, and that is Channel 4's cultural contribution to Britain now.
Okay, well, celebrity culture and the celebrity idols are nothing new. They've been around for 200-300 years. It is something that kids care a lot about, and if Channel 4 wants to have a young brand, it certainly needs to be there. Look, shock horror, let me agree with you. Big Brother was probably on Channel 4 for too long for Channel 4's good. I can say that in retrospect now. I think that was probably the case. So, I think Phil's making some good points. I'm not going to try and strangle him here live on air, Krish, because, he's making some fair points. But I would be more defensive of Channel 4's current achievements than Phil is. I think it is still being distinctive, and I think it has the appetite to continue to be so.
Well, I think that's fine, but I think again that's framed, I think, in an argument about where it sits within the broadcasting landscape. And what I would like to see more of is Channel 4, and you mentioned the BBC. And if you look across them and talk about their suite of channels, there's 16 channels devoted to BBC and Channel 4. And yet, you know, the impact on the kind of regionalism in this country, everything is retreated back to London. You know, the events, we fight it all the time in Liverpool, this constant problem that we get media tourists come up and they'll spend like 2 or 3 minutes looking at serious issues. Whereas, you know, I think we've got so much resource across those 6 channels that we actually could take a view and say, well, actually, let's give a lot more airtime to people out in the regions to do what they want to do with their time and contribute to the bigger social debates, which are in education, health, policing, all those kind of things.
Again, you're right. And again, it's unfair to say Channel 4's not conscious of that. I mean, I'm a Channel 4 viewer now. I've got no connection with Channel 4 anymore at all. Yeah. But they have a thing called the Alpha Fund that they've set up, which is to try to bring in new voices, new young companies, many of which are in the regions. And so, you know, again, we should all be pushing them to put more money into that, because you're right, but they are doing some of it.
But you and I have sat there for 30 years and we've seen these kind of schemes and these projects and everything always come over, and we know what they're for. They're there so that they can stand up and say, we've got this, we've got that, we've got that. And remember, our good friend Stuart Cosgrove has had this title, Head of Nations and Regions. And what does that actually mean? So if I would like it, I'd be much more impressed if they turn around and said, "Look, tell you what we'll do. We'll actually give X% of the schedule over to programmes that are actually made right outside London, within the regions, by people, and actually they'll also have the editorial control."
Do you think Channel 4 would still do Brookside now?
I don't think they would. I don't think any broadcaster has actually got the moral courage actually to take something on like that now. I think that's, again, not because the people involved, they're all committed to their own regime, but I just think television itself has moved slightly. And I think that's what we've also got to think about. The television is I do believe passionately, television can be a very strong tool for social intervention. And I think we've lost that. I think we've lost that mission out of it. It's not just about how do we survive.
Well, now it's just about entertainment.
I think it's about how they survive in a fragmented marketplace.
Well, you know, part of the time it is, and if it wasn't about entertainment, it wouldn't be raising the money to pay for shows. But Sri Lankan killing fields, Hughes fish fight, these are Channel 4 campaigns,
and it's the definition of entertainment. I mean, that whole amalgam of inform, entertain, educate. And I think the things like, you look at the impact that they had with the Olympics and the Paralympics. Right? And that is actually the power of television. I saw this in Capital Culture in Liverpool. If you put it on national broadcasting and you actually say to people, this is actually good, people actually turn around and say, it is good, you know, and you get this great sense of well-being. But too often, they're not offering that supportive spotlight to a lot of the great things that are going on in the country.
The final word, Phil, has to be, you must agree and accept that times have changed, and Channel 4 has to redefine itself. It can't define itself by how it did 30 years ago.
I think that's another media construct. I think I've seen this so often. The times have changed, therefore television has to change. Unfortunately, for most people in the country, life is very much the same as it was in 1980.
So do you wish Channel 4 was very much like it was in the 1980s? Do you think it would be better if it was?
I think the ethos would be better. If they had the ethos of 1982, I'm not talking about the way you present things, the way you shoot them, the way all that kind of stuff. The point is that most people in this country are still facing exactly the same issues they were facing in 1980, and television is not reflecting it the way it should do.
No, that's far too backward-looking. I'm going to have a go at you now, Phil. No. That won't do at all. Times have changed. Channel 4 has to redefine itself. Fundamental problems society faces may be the same, but the way of interpreting them, the voice that you show has to be different. You have to keep on redefining.
Thank you both very much indeed.